Hello and welcome again to another episode of The Legal Zone, where we tackle injustice. Today we have another amazing story to share with the listening audience. We have a man who is going through a story that, like last week, is one of those things that you just cannot imagine is happening. There is a lot of information that you're going to want to write down and take as we go through this story. There's some legal provisions that most people are not aware of that can come back and bite you if you're not careful. So we're going to discuss all of that as we go through this show. Again, today we have Dr. Arlena Cheney. Hello, doctor.
Hello.
We have Mr. John Salati, one of the partners at Remus Enterprises Law Group. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Salam. Great to be here.
Are you all ready to rock and roll?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Alrighty, and we have Amir and his lovely wife Brittany with us, and we're going to get more into their story today. We'll get to that in a minute. Also, remember, you could subscribe to the channel below. That would give you alerts as to when we bring new content. We're going to be producing a lot of shows, so subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions or concerns, you could email thelegalzone@remuslaw.com. The legalzone@remuslaw.com, and that's going to come up on the screen. Shout out to Dave really quickly. Dave is the guy who produces this. Thank you so much, Dave. You're doing such an awesome job. All right, let's get into it. Last week, we talked about defamation, and we were careful not to say anything that was not true about anyone. The one defense to defamation is the truth. Talking to my law students and people preparing for the bar. So we're not going to say anything that's not true about someone. But sometimes you could get in trouble if you say something that is true and release it to the public. And I'm saying this for you, Amir and Brittany, because the situation that we're going to be talking about is a matter that we could touch on this. So let me just briefly go over this. I'm going to share my screen with the audience. This is the teachable moment that we have on the show. So sharing information that is true can result in a tort called the invasion of privacy. Invasion of privacy. So what basically is invasion of privacy? There's 4 different areas, but we're only going to be concerned with one today. We're going to be concerned with the unreasonable publicity of private life. So there are 3 elements to that. 1, you make public information. 2, that is not valid concern to the public. In other words, it's not anybody's business. And 3, it would be highly offensive to a reasonable person. Those are the 3 elements to invasion of privacy. So say I'm at John's house one day in the morning, and I see what he wears when he's watching TV eating breakfast, right? He's wearing something and he's in his own house. I just happen to be there. And then I go online and I start telling everybody, you all should see what John wears when he's at home eating breakfast. If I do that, I subject myself to being sued for the invasion of privacy. If that whatever he wears is offensive to a reasonable person, I'm opening myself up to that. So what's not private? Anything that is visible in a public place, public records, things you post on social media You cannot post pictures, your personal business on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and then when someone shares that same information that you posted, you turn around and say, oh, they invaded my privacy. Once when you've made something public, it becomes fair game. So now, again, as we talk about this particular case, there may be some things that were private between you and the other person to this. Be mindful that you can't speak on those private things because you open yourself up to the invasion of privacy.
Sure.
So whatever is private, for all those who are listening, it's private for a reason. Things that are said behind closed doors. There used to be this thing long ago that young people know nothing about called phone booths. Things that are said in a phone booth is private. But now if you're walking down the street and you're on your phone and you're spreading your business in public and someone hears that information and they share it, you really can't. All righty. So that's that. Now then, Mr. Amir, we've interviewed you. For those who know, John knows this. We always interview our clients to know their story. The more facts, the more details, it helps us to understand what's going on, and it prepares us to represent them. It also does another thing. It weeds out let me not say that word. It weeds out the people who may not be credible. We sit down and we talk to individuals. Some people, they just have beef with someone and their story is really not that credible the more you speak to them. So I spoke to Amir. It took, I think, 2 days. We had to break it up in 2 parts. And I know that Amir's story is credible, though amazing. It's a credible story and it's very fact-packed. There's a lot of facts going on. So I want us to just start where the mother of your children, you have, in this particular case, you don't have your kids currently. Two children. Let's start with when in the beginning of 2019, around March, where the mother's children left to go to North Carolina. Let's start there.
So me and her, we wound up divorcing because things were getting toxic. So I called her father because, you know, we deal with divorce and everything. It's, you know, from a religious perspective. So, you know, I went through the religious protocol. I called her father, told her, you know, this is not working. I want to divorce her. You know, the relationship at this point is just too toxic. And I told him to, you know, that, you know, I wanted to start with the divorce. He came down and picked her up and took her back to Massachusetts with the
Where were you? Where were you all at this time?
We were all living in Maryland at the time.
Okay.
He came and, you know, he came, picked up her stuff and, you know, brought her out to Massachusetts to try to restart and get on her feet. And we had agreed that she was going to leave the children. We have 2 children together. And he took her to Massachusetts with the agreement that I was going to pay 3 months of her rent, you know, to give her some time to, you know, get on her feet and get started. And so I was going to maintain her for 3 months consecutively after the divorce, which I did. And she went back up to Massachusetts for a little while, for about a year. And then she moved back to the DMV area, unknown to me, with, like, you know, evil intentions, trying to get the
all
kids.
this time you have your 2 kids.
All this time I have my 2 kids. Yeah.
All right. Another quick question. Did you always have your 2 kids, or was there any a time where you did not have them?
There was never a time that I did not have my 2 children up until this time. Up all the way up into after the divorce, I've always had the 2 of them.
Okay.
Because like at times we would separate, and you know, she goes through different mental issues and stuff like that. So we would separate, and she would go take a little break and come back. You know, we just separate. It was never a divorce, but then we finally divorced. She went to Massachusetts and then came back to the DMV area. And when she came back, um, I was in a transitional stage. I was moving from one area to another. So I told her, I was like, listen, um, right now I'm in a transitional period. Uh, you know, you want to take the custody of the two children for now, and as soon as I get situated, you know, we could just get, you know, give them back. We got, you know, we had a cordial relationship at that point. It wasn't no like after the divorce, everything was cordial at first, and then
It's important to note when you say you all were married and you had a divorce, this is within your own religious system.
right,
Okay.
everything that was carried out was within the Islamic Sharia, I guess you could say, the Islamic law, right? So we would refer to that because we're both Muslims and we both believe this, so this is what we would refer to. And you know, everything was smooth. We would go through Islamic scholars for mediation with the children, with the custody of the children. So at this point, I gave her the children because I was making a transition, right? And it was only supposed to be for like a month at the most. We had both agreed on that. Well, as soon as I got situated, I went back to her and I was like, okay, well, the agreement was that you're going to give me the children back. And she didn't want to do it. So at that point, I was like, well, I was weighing my options. I was like, okay, we're doing things Islamically. So I went through the scholar again and I was like, hey, you know, I gave her the children. She didn't feel like she wanted to give me the kids back.
What year and month are we in now?
September 2018.
And Amir, how old are the children at this time? So you had been with them up until this month-long period, the whole time.
Their whole life. From the
Okay.
time they were born, I was with their mother their whole time. So this 1 month, I was like, okay, well, hold the kids. And you know, we had came to a verbal agreement. It wasn't nothing signed and sealed. It was just like, okay, hold the kids. It was an agreement. She said, okay, fine. When I went back to pick them up, she wasn't gonna give them to me. So I was like, okay, well, let's go back through the Islamic scholar. We went back to him and he was like, he gave a ruling, right? He said that when a woman divorces, right, before she marries for the first time again, before she gets remarried, the custody of the children will remain with her. So I said, okay. He decided that she would keep the custody of the children. So I said, you know what? To me, I'm a man of religion, so I'm like, you know what? If this is what the religion is, I'm giving into that. Okay, fine. Well, out of nowhere, 2 months later, she calls me all excited. She's like, yeah, I got a husband in North Carolina, right? And she's like, well, you know, and I'm going down to North Carolina. And she's like asking me, well, what about the kids? I'm like, well, what about the kids? You go and enjoy your new journey. Give me the children while you're getting situated or whatever the case may be, and we could just still do the co-parent thing. You know, like I said, I would always drive the kids to her wherever they're at. Like I would make sure, because my thing was I didn't want the impact of the divorce to affect the children negatively. So I tried my best to keep them out of the mess. You know, I wanted it to be like, get that mommy time as much as they can and be able to see me, sharing the kids. So it was like, that was my approach with everything. So I was like, fine. She went down there, she gave me the kids back. So I was like, I was happy about that because they just came back to my custody a couple months later out of nowhere. And then, so I moved to Philadelphia. So I'm in Philadelphia, and I'm bringing the children to Virginia every week.
Okay, so wait, so she gives you back the kids so she can go to North Carolina to
Right,
marry this guy.
right.
Right.
So I would go to
So
Virginia
the
anyway.
kids come back to you at this point.
The kids come back to me.
Okay.
Yeah, at this point. So we would for the first few months we had agreed, we was like, okay, well, we're gonna meet up in the DMV to, you know, see the kids or whatever. But she never came up for any of the visits, right? So then all of a sudden she pops back up and she's like, I'm living in Baltimore now, out of nowhere. I'm like, well, what happened to your husband? What's going on with that? She was very evasive about it. She wouldn't say, you know, the particulars to anything that was going on. And I'm like, man, I really don't want to know. Like, it's like, whatever your business, like, okay, cool. I'm just worried about the kids. So she was back in Baltimore. So I'm like, okay, beautiful. You're right there. It's not going to be a far drive for me. Every week I went to Baltimore, taking the kids there and picking them up on Sunday. I would give her money because in Islam, you know, men are the main, have to take care of the maintenance of the children, totally, you know. So I was totally taking care of all of the maintenance, finances, everything, gas, you know, which I didn't have to do that, but I did it. And I would bring the kids back every weekend. And then out of nowhere, so I'm living my life. She's living her life. I have my relationship, which she was, I don't know what was going on, but she came and showed up out at my wife's house, out in Philly, in Jersey at the time. And she starts a big old ruckus about how, you know, she wants to see the kids and everybody's keeping the kids from her and the police were called. And I'm like, and all of this whole situation just happened out of nowhere. I was like, it was just so weird. And then 2 months later, she kidnapped the kids out of nowhere. She just took them.
Okay, so we'll get to that. Let's lead up to that. So
Okay.
you all have this arrangement between you and her where
Right.
she's getting the kids. Is it every week or every 2 weeks?
She was seeing them every week. And then like towards, let's say, like when she took them in December. So by December, okay, so when she came, the reason I brought up her coming out to my wife's house to cause a disruption at my wife's house was because that was kind of like the prerequisite for her taking the kids. Because it's like it started bad vibes. It started distrust. So, and when she did that, when she all of a sudden showed up at my wife's house, like just because my wife even called the police. My wife at the time didn't even know who she was because I didn't tell her about her, like too much about who she was. My wife was scared. She was following my wife one day home and she like was like, well, let me, you know, she just drove up on her. Brittany could tell you really, but I'm not good at explaining. Like, go ahead.
Well, yeah, she just waited for her in a parking lot randomly one day, 2 days after dropping the kids off early than what was scheduled from her summer visit. So completely unexpected. And she came to my house first, and I texted Amir like, I'm not sure why she's in Jersey. She didn't tell you she was coming to Jersey. She didn't tell me she was coming to Jersey. And then when his other wife came to grab some clothes from me, I gave them to her. And then about 5 minutes later, she's calling me and she's saying, she's following me in the car. And we're all shocked. Like, what do you mean she's following you in the car? Like, what's going on here? And then, you know, she followed her to her house. The police were being called. They bombarded her car and like just totally set up a mess of a situation for now Amir to have to deal with. How's he gonna facilitate his kid when he has no idea what's going on?
It was just so random and so crazy. So like you could tell like she was like she had like intentions on her mind. Like, okay, so like basically
It sounded like you were saying she had this pre-planned.
Right. You could tell it was totally premeditated because everything was cool in the relationship, and like she just in the co-parenting situation until she just did that, and it was like I was like, what am I gonna do? So I kind of like backed away from her for a few weeks and didn't bring the kids. So I kind of like just, kind of cut communication for a couple of weeks. I'm like, what if I drop the kids off and she doesn't want to return them now? And I don't have nothing in court going on. I'm like, this is kind of weird.
And this was around September.
This was around September. She had just dropped the kids off after her summer break. She had the kids for the whole summer. She dropped them off. 4 days later, after she dropped them off, she came and caused that.
Well, she ended her visit. She calls randomly one day and says, this is too much. Can your mom meet me to come get the kids? You can have them back now. And then that was like earlier in the week.
I drove all the way out there.
Yeah, he went and got the kids. And that was at the end of the week. The next weekend, she showed up unannounced, demanding her kids, it's my weekend, blah, 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 when there's nothing, you know what I mean? Like there was no prior communication before that.
Okay. So now we're going to December, and there came a time when you would agree that she would have 2 children for Christmas break.
So this is where it got real thick. Okay, so basically I dropped them off for the winter break. And prior to that, she's
and
like,
they're in school with you, right? They're actually enrolled.
They're enrolled in school. They're in the best school system in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. The kid is super smart. Mariam as well. I take them to school, drive them to school every morning. I pick them up from school every day. I was totally involved. I was at the parent-teacher conferences with them. I had, meetings with Mariam's teachers. I had meetings with Ali's teachers. I was 1000% involved. Mind you, so I'm in an open relationship. This is one of my partners. My other partner is a doctor, right? In Cherry Hill. So she, kind of like was also kind of like, so like basically it was like, anyway, let me get back to what happened in December. So in December, huh?
I thought John was trying to add. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So basically, in December, I went to drop off the children for the winter break. And I'm like, okay, I gave her $200. I was like, oh, the kids, I hope you guys enjoy your winter break and all that, and I felt so funny that day, because she told me, she was like, well, why don't you pack more of the kids' clothes? And I'm like,
well, she told me because a week prior to this visit, she was seeing them about every weekend or every other weekend, I'm not exactly sure, but she had reached out to me to try to say, oh, can me and you communicate? I appreciate everything that you do, blah, blah, blah. But just to make sure everything is always smooth, can me and you communicate? And I said, okay, yeah, sure, as long as that's okay with all parties. She starts telling me, can you pack more clothes for it's cold, they need more clothes, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just relaying the message, and he's feeling like, why does she need all of their clean clothes or all of their clothes? And she was like almost at a state of desperation, like, I'll wash them, just pack them. Because I'm like, not everything is clean. She's like, I'll wash them, just pack them. But trying to keep everything cordial, keep everything nice. And then, like he said, he took them over there.
So I took them over there.
So you drive from New Jersey to Baltimore.
That's another thing. Like, what was totally overlooked is like all this driving, man hours on the road, finances, tolls. I mean, it gets very costly, right? So then I take them there. I drop them off. The plan is to get them right before school starts, so I could go. I think it was December 29th. I was supposed to be there.
Yeah.
Well, it was December 21st to the December 31st.
31st. Okay. Because I have the police report. I don't remember. I'm bad with dates. I'm sorry, but I have the police reports and everything because I called the police when everything happened. So so then I dropped them off, and I gave her groceries, I gave her money, so she ain't got to worry about feeding the kids while they're there. And then a couple of days later, I happened to be in the DMV visiting my mother. I stopped by there during this winter break, and then I saw the kids, gave them another hug. I was like, Daddy will be back in a couple of days, and they was like, okay, Dad, okay, we'll see you in a couple of days. And then the 29th came. So regular stuff, just like been going on for the past couple of years. I set out on my journey to Maryland to go pick up my children. I'm happy. I'm excited to see them. I haven't seen them in, days, and I was excited to get them back. Excited to start the new year. It's gonna be the first of the year, and it's just a new start. I'm gonna go get the kids. I'm on my way out there. I start the text and no response. I'm like, oh, that's funny, no response. It's not usual. I just, wait a little while. I text her again, no response. I'm like, so at this point, I'm like, I get a bad feeling in me, but I say to myself, no, this woman can't be serious. She's not gonna do this. This she's not gonna do. So I go and I get and now I get to Baltimore and I get a message. I could go to my thread, but if you want me to, I'll try to find
just go ahead, sum it up.
Okay, so sum it up. She basically tells me, I'm sorry to tell you that I will not be returning the kids to you. The message was real weird. After that, she says, I'm gonna have the kids start to see counselors, and you can contact the counselor to talk to the kids from now on. And then she tells me that she starts telling her father and everybody else that I was beating Ali, that I was physically beating him. And I never use corporal punishment on my children. So this, to me, it was just like, wow. Like, I couldn't even believe that was an accusation, because prior to that, she had always had a narrative that I was beating her, right? She had never, ever, ever made an accusation about me beating the children, right? But all of a sudden, now in 2000,
she's been gone for 2 years.
Yeah. 3 years after the marriage, right? Well, she's, 3 years after the marriage, now all of a sudden I become a child abuser too. So she had start with this, and that she's firing, she's telling everybody all of these accusations, how I beat Ali, and Ali has all types of mental problems because of me, and that he's what she said, regressive. He has these regressive because of me, and just like making all of these slanderous.
Do you ever go to the apartment where she was living?
Oh, yes, I did. She was living on Pickering Drive in Baltimore. I almost slept in that apartment complex. Of course I did. I stayed there for days circling that damn place. I could not. So anyway, I get there and I'm like, no, this woman is not serious. So I raised her son, Khalif, right? So I know him. He's like my son, right? So he has a level of respect for me. So
this is a son from a previous marriage that she had.
This is her son from a previous marriage. He's there at the house. I knock on the door. Khalif, where's your mom? I'm here to pick up the kids. He's sitting behind the door. He's not saying nothing, but I heard him in there with his friend talking when I was listening. I start to knock more. Khalif, where's the kids at? My mom's not here. My mom's not here. So then I start to bang louder. Doom, doom, doom. Listen, open up the door. Where's the children at? I want the children. I want the children. I started to feel like I was just like, I don't know, it just felt like my whole world was crushing in. Like, I couldn't believe it. Like, I'm like, yo, where's the children? It just, everything just like, it was crazy. So then I was like, well, immediately I was like, I need a paper trail. I know, this is now at this point, it's out of control because I don't know what this woman's capable of at this point.
So you start texting her.
I'm texting her like crazy, and I call the police. I came to pick up my children to start a paper trail. So I came to pick up my children. They're not here, you know, and they went through the whole protocol. Do you have custody? No, we have an agreement outside of court, but we've been doing it. Well, you know, they can't do nothing, you know, their hands are tied. They're like, oh, well, you got to go through the courts, you know? And so, but she was gone with the children. She was in the wind. I mean, she was nowhere in Baltimore.
She wasn't there at the time you was knocking on the door.
No, she was gone.
Okay.
She was long gone.
All right, so let's speed it up. So now
she went back. Oh, whole time she had told me.
But you don't know where they are. You're still texting her.
I have no idea where they are. But my first thought is to revert back to her husband, whatever he was to her at this point, whether he was her current husband or her ex-husband. But I'm like, okay, she could be down there, right? So I get to calling other Muslims, like that know everybody's in common, everybody knows each other. Hey, listen, you know, do you know this brother down in North Carolina that, you know, Melissa is married to, and and I get information and I call him, contact, yo, listen.
Long story short,
right?
A whole year and some months go by.
Now
before you find me. And did you see your children at all?
Not even once. Not even.
Wow.
Once.
So now it's in the court system, and now we're fighting for you to get your kids back.
Now it's in the court system. Not only am I fighting to get my kids back, what we missed was that in the process of this, she ran around the country and started putting order of protections on me. Out there, they call it a CPO.
Right.
A civil protection.
Let's talk about that.
So she immediately started to use the fact, she immediately started to ride the I'm an abused woman bandwagon.
Okay, so let's stop right there. Let's stop right there.
Can I get a question in?
Yeah, I was about to turn it over to you, Dr. Cheney. Do you?
Okay, here's my question. Is it Amir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sorry about and Brittany. Here's my question.
She took she's in love with the children right now, but I'm here.
Oh, okay, that's great. Refresh us about the role of the scholar when and everybody agreed, I thought, that the kids would go with her.
Right.
So how could she be accused of doing something that the scholar said?
Totally understand.
Okay.
So what happened was the scholars, if you heard the ruling is that if the woman, you and the woman divorce, if before she gets remarried,
there you go,
she can get the custody of the children. When she got married, the minute she met this guy, she called me, and then she said, you know, I'm getting married. Do you want the children back? I said, of course I do. Yeah, send them to me, and she sent them. So she might have had them in her custody prior to. I'm sorry, I'm saying kidnapping, because that's exactly what she did.
And we're gonna get to that in a minute.
Yeah. So prior to her kidnapping the children, she had custody for the kids 2 months maybe of their life. You know, and that was during that small period that I was making that transitional move. And she kind of like gained custody, so to speak, through that, because, you know, through the move, I gave her the children, and then we went to the Islamic scholar. He ruled that they stay with her, and then they stayed there for 2 months, and then she gave them back to me.
So because of the disappearing part, you all you couldn't solo go back to the scholar.
Oh, I sure, we went back to the scholar. It was a lot. Okay. So we wound up going back to the scholar, but I think if we stick at the CPO and the order of protections, we'll kind of stay on track better.
Okay.
Because that's kind of like what started happening. When she grabbed the children, first she went down. Okay, I remember I called the police when I went to pick up the children and they weren't there. 3 weeks later, I'm in Jersey. I don't know where she's at. 3 weeks later, I get a subpoena, what do you call them? I was served by the sheriff for an order of protection in Baltimore. I said, what's this? No. Well, however I got served, whether, whatever it is. They came, when she put in the order of protection, she said that I came to her house. Mind you, she wasn't even there. She said I came to her house, banging on her door. I'm known to have a gun. I came banging on her door, irate, threatening her and all this stuff, and threatening her son. And she wasn't even there. This is 3 weeks after I called the police. She goes down to Baltimore and she writes this report out, and they serve me with an order of protection. I'm like reading all this stuff. I'm like, what is this? So I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna show up in court in Baltimore. I had to drive all the way out there. I get to court, she doesn't come, right? So the judge throws the order of protection out. I'm like, well, that's crazy. She doesn't come. I know why she didn't come. She was somewhere in the country around with the children. I don't know where she was at. But next thing you know, 1 month later, I get another order, another CPO. What's this? Now it's in DC. With a list of new offenses. So then I go to the court in DC, totally unprepared, and the judge grants her the CPO.
And we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Okay, go ahead.
So, Dr. Cheney, does that answer the question about?
Yeah, and the only other thing, I keep hearing that she's changing, and what's making her change, and what I'm getting at, is religion changing with her too? She's a Muslim, right? And so is that changing too? Because she's not the person that you initially.
She projects changes. Who knows what's really going on, but what she projects changes. When she was with him, it was like, oh, she would be following all the rules. And now that she's not with him, there is no rules. These rules don't matter. But she still has a hijab on her head. So, we don't know what really is going on. These are just the actions we're seeing.
So we have a lot of dynamics going on. We have a man and a woman who share 2 children together. They have an agreement between themselves, and it's part of their own religious tenets that they're following. Then you have a situation where the mother takes the kids. She steps outside of their own agreement, and the kids are gone. Then we have a valid CPO that's placed against him, right? A lot of stuff going on. So John,
pandemic on top of all of that.
Right. John, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. Well, I think what I want to do is take this moment to point out, Amir just showed us the danger any of us face when we walk into court on our own. It's worth you taking a moment to say, yeah, this whole thing about having representation is no joke, and how it is though for somebody to get representation. But his example of what goes in there, he's been open, he's been doing his thing. He showed up the previous time, the judge throws it out. This time he shows up and he gets sandbagged.
Now let's talk about how serious this can be. First, let me share this screen, because he had mentioned, he called it parental kidnapping. Can you all see that?
Yeah.
All right. So this is the statute, prohibited acts on parental kidnapping. No parent or any person acting pursuant to directions from the parent may intentionally conceal a child from the child's other parent. No relative or any person acting pursuant to directions from the relative who knows that another person is the lawful custodian of a child may abduct, take, or carry away a child with the intent to prevent a lawful custodian from exercising rights to custody of the child. And it goes on to saying you can't take the child away without letting the other parent know where they're going. You can't keep the child secret for more than 48 hours after a lawful custodian demands the child. These are things that you cannot do by law. So did custodial parents take place in this? I mean, did parental kidnapping take place in this?
Yes, sir.
It most definitely did.
And
Now,
all-
I had an opportunity to depose the mother, Brittany. And I'll say, when I do a deposition, I know exactly the questions to ask. I know exactly the information that I need, and I'm in and I'm out. But with her, this deposition went over 2 hours. She's good. She's slippery. For those who watch boxing, she's a Floyd Mayweather. She's doing the shoulder roll. I can't pin her down. I want you all to watch this. And thank you, Brittany. Brittany sent me a breakdown of everything that she said that wasn't truthful. Young lawyers out there, I would strongly advise you to depose video. I learned so much going back and watching her mannerisms. Dr. Cheney tells me all the time, what is it, 80, 90% of communication is nonverbal?
Absolutely.
So when I go back and I look at this, I see how her eyes move. I see her nonverbal communication. And then I say, And so it coincided with what Brittany told me. They say that women know when people are lying. They have some sort of some inner lie detector test. I'm starting to believe it. But so much came out of being able to study her deposition. But just watch this, and we'll discuss this, how she's able to avoid questions. Again, I'm trying to pin her down to admitting the parental kidnapping, the elements. This is what I'm trying to do. So let me share while we watch this and we'll talk about it. All right, we go. Fascinating TV. Let me get right to, all right, it's about here. Can you all see
Go
that?
ahead. Were you there?
I'm not sure what day he came. I had already informed him that they weren't returning with him.
Can you all see that?
Before you
But I wasn't at the home.
It's frozen, but we could hear it.
Oh, wait,
came knocking, no.
Okay,
wait.
before you even saw the kids again,
I don't see where it is.
before he brought them
Okay,
to
wait,
you,
wait,
he
wait,
told
wait.
you that.
Wait. All right. Sorry about that. Let's do it again.
That he was picking them up. He was dropping them off to you, right?
I'm not sure when we confirmed the exact day.
But you knew to be home to welcome your children.
The day that he brought them, of course.
Yeah, right. So that what I said was, before he brought them, he told you of the day he was going to be bringing them.
Yeah, we had already agreed on the time.
Okay, so you had agreed to that.
Yeah.
And then he said what day he would be picking them up.
Correct.
Okay, so there was an agreement. There was an understanding between your mind and his mind. Okay, good. And you're shaking your head.
I agreed to whatever demands he had to being able to see my children. He was also saying I couldn't have people in my house. I agreed to that too.
Well, you didn't agree to everything because part of the agreement was to return them.
I did agree to everything he said. That's the reason why he brought them. If I didn't agree, he wouldn't have brought them.
Yeah, you agreed to it, but you didn't follow through with your agreement, right?
At the end of the day, no, I did not.
Okay. And you didn't follow through because you had concerns,
Absolutely.
but you didn't call the police or Child Protective Services and voice these concerns to them, did you?
I didn't feel the need.
Okay. Did you let him know where you were taking the kids?
Where was I taking them? I still lived in Baltimore.
How long did you stay in Baltimore?
I stayed there up until he came to my apartment and was trying to engage my older
Look
son
at her
to
eyes.
come out and fight him.
Okay. The question is how long?
How long what?
How long did you stay in Baltimore after you had Amir and Marianne?
Boy, this is so hard.
I lived there. I stayed there. I didn't leave until I felt it wasn't safe for me to return.
I get all of that, but I'm asking you for a length of time. 1 month, 2 months, a year. At some point you left Baltimore, and I'm trying to figure out how long after December 30th did you move? Was it a month, 2 months?
When, after I informed him that they weren't returning, and when he did show up to my apartment, I wasn't there. It was a lot of commotion there. He tried to get my son to come outside. At that point, I felt like it wasn't safe for me to return to that apartment. I had not moved yet. I was still at that apartment. I just was not physically in it.
Okay, when was all of this?
I'm not sure of the day that he came to my apartment.
The 31st, as agreed.
If that's the day that he came, then that was the last day I was at that apartment.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to understand. So you picked up and left an apartment in a day.
Correct.
And where did you go?
Came to DC.
Where you're living now?
Correct.
Was that place pre-planned? How did that happen?
No, I didn't have this apartment. I got this apartment after being here. I went into a shelter in DC.
Okay. So had you contacted the shelter before?
No,
So on December 31st, you went straight from Baltimore. Where in Baltimore, by the way?
I'm not sure of the area. I'm not familiar.
You was living there. What's the address of the Baltimore apartment?
I believe it was 24.
223 Pickering Drive.
I don't know what area that's called.
So you see, based on that information there, she knew that she was leaving. She knew because within a day she picked up and she was gone. And we just saw what the parental kidnapping is. She didn't tell you. You came to get them. She concealed them. She hid them from you. And the time was more than 48 hours. It turned out to be 16, 17 months.
Mr. Solid.
Now, as a result of all this, everyone, he goes, and I talked to her about this, to pick up his children. The children are gone. He's had his children from day one. And then this particular day comes and they're gone. And I asked her, well, what would you do if that happened to you? She said, I'll be angry. And I said, well, angry is when you lock your keys in the car. These are your kids. And she admits that she'll be very upset. Now, she uses your anger that you expressed to her, sending the text messages. And obviously you're upset. You might not even remember what you said, but it was probably some harsh words.
Right. Yeah. Well, so, okay, before we even get to the text message, you know, the thing is like the biggest miscarriage of justice here is the lies and the slanders that she's putting on me. Because, like, for example, you see this cup right here? This is a cup that she bought me when we divorced with my children on it, Father's Day, you know, talking about how I'm such a great father and all this other stuff. And then to go after that and to go around and spread that I beat my kids, that I'm a woman beater, that I'm you know, it just to go against everything that I'm about, and then to put it in a court system, right? Because if I go for a job, this CPO is gonna come up.
Okay, so let's talk about the CPO. Let's talk about the
CPO. So the CPO.
So hold on 1 second. So she uses the text messages. So when somebody goes to get a CPO, they have to present some sort of evidence to warrant getting a CPO. And judges find themselves in a very slippery situation because on one hand,
and that's what happened.
If they don't give the CPO, and then that person goes and beats or worse kills the person, then the question is, well,
Well,
they came to the judge.
basically, that's what the judge stated at the end, right? He was like, well, this is not criminal. Like, I can't see this being prosecuted in a criminal case with this evidence, but I'm going to grant her the CPO.
Okay, so
you know, and then he said, when you guys get to family court, they'll figure it out there.
okay, so let's talk about that.
I was like,
When a CPO is issued in DC, and it's probably in every other state, there's a presumption that you're not fit to be a parent. Once a CPO is issued, if you're a parent, there's a presumption that you no longer could share joint custody.
right.
So other parent gets sole custody. So this is what we're facing now.
I missed something.
All right, hold on one second.
I went.
One second. So this is what we're facing now. Amir was the custodial parent. You saw the mother. She's very believable. She's a person who would say things flat out. You have to be very, like I said, I had to watch her deposition a few times before I started saying, okay, this is not going well.
Right.
But now we have Amir who has a CPO issued against him. Some people out there won't even bother going to court about the CPO.
I totally forgot about, and this is very important. This is very pertinent to what we're talking about, right? So prior to that, when she first took the children, by January, she took them on the 29th. By January 15th, I want to say, I retained a lawyer to get custody. While she was going around putting all of these order of protections on me, so now what I had was an issue of jurisdiction, right? I have a lawyer that I just paid $4,000 to in Jersey who wants to help me get the kids back. But how is he going to do that when you got a woman who's bouncing all over the country? So on top, that, and then, so, this is prior to the CPO being granted. Because when I went to court for the CPO, I'm like, Your Honor, look, I've been trying to find this woman for the past 3-4 months. I can't get her served. Man, I don't know what was on the judge's mind that day, or he just was like oblivious to everything I was saying. I'm like, look, this woman has literally been, I said, Your Honor, can you serve her? He was like, I'm not serving nobody. It was a game of charades up in that courtroom. Even so then I call, like jurisdiction, back to jurisdiction, I'm calling my lawyer. What do I do? I'm out here in DC, and he's like, what happened? They granted the CPO? Oh, I can't do nothing for you now. $4,000 down the drain. He's like, so I said, what do you suggest I do as my attorney? He said, go in DC, go get go and hire an attorney to overturn that CPO.
And then the government shut down.
And then the government shut down.
Yeah.
I'm running around like, oh my God, I got time on my hands. I go to the lady from Rising for Justice, pleading my case, crying to her. I give her a stack of evidence like this. Look, this is text messages. This woman is everything. And it was like, because of the pandemic, it was just like so much going on in the country. This woman is in the wind with my children somewhere in the damn country with her mental problems. I was just like a total wreck. And then I ran into Solid. God bless you.
Yes. And where we are now is we had a hearing that was scheduled for Friday, but something happened with the judge, unfortunately, and it's going to be rescheduled. But we're fighting for Amir to get his children back. I'm confident that you're going to get them back. But what's bad with family court is the time. Time is an element that just keeps going. And when time keeps going, the children continue to grow up. Now, we went before the judge for a semi-emergency hearing. It wasn't really it really wasn't an emergency, but they put us in quickly. And the judge allowed Amir to have alternating weekends custody. to see how that goes. Because her attorneys, again, she has a group of legal aid attorneys, and they're arguing, he has a CPO. That's called an intra-family offense. And because of that, she gets custody. And so the judge is not really paying much attention. He said, okay, but there's a timeline. The kids were kidnapped before the CPO was issued. And the judge hasn't heard that argument yet. We file documents, and when we get before the judge, we will lay it all out. And the judge at that point has to turn things around. We want to get the kids back to you before the school year starts. And that's the plan. And again, that's what we're going to fight for. Nothing's ever guaranteed in court, but I'm being hopeful. You're a man of faith, a man of prayer, and we are going to.
I believe justice will prevail. I
I
know that I'm not guilty of any of this stuff. Like any of this stuff. And even the text messages. She produced a whole bunch of text messages that were not from my number. I absolutely, positively never, ever threatened that woman. For one, for me to sit up there and threaten a woman with bipolar, depression.
And remember
And she got my kids, and she's somewhere in the country. If you think that I'm gonna sit there and be threatening her through a text messages, no way. I was texting her so nicely. Please, what are you doing? This is not the way to go. Why would you do that? The text messages that she produced in court, they were not from me. I don't think me and you haven't even talked about that. I think maybe you just assumed that the text message, because we didn't get into it really. But those text messages that she produced were not from my phone.
What's interesting is when she filed her CPO, she didn't say anything about you abusing the kids. And by the way, just so everyone knows, I contacted the scholar, I contacted her own father, and I contacted some other people familiar with both of them. 100% of the individuals said that Mr. Amir Berelik never abused the kids and never even heard her mention abusing the kids. In her own report for the CPO, she doesn't say anything about abuse to the kids.
Ever.
She said she's fearful for her life, but she doesn't say it's because I just kidnapped this man's kids.
Right.
So that is but Amir, we're about to let you go because we don't want to,
okay.
wish we could talk to you forever.
All right.
But thank you so much, you and me. We're going to continue to fight in your corner. We're going to continue to do I know you've just seen me, but we have other people in the background. Okay. John is someone else we're all fighting for you.
All right, boss. I appreciate it. God bless, man. All right. Have a good day.
All righty, my man. You take care.
Bye-bye.
Let's see. All right. Dr. Cheney. Thoughts, views?
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to ask him in the end was, what are some of the strategies that he's employing? You might know that yourself, to take care of himself, to stay in the moment, to stay positive, to survive. And I hate to use the word mental because I don't truly know the mental stability there, but those kinds of things. What are you doing to stay whole, if you will?
And that's a good point. And most of the times, courts like to know that the other parent is doing some sort of self-healing, self-preparation. And I haven't mentioned that to this particular client yet. I probably will, to let the court know, look, during this time, he's in therapy. He's doing whatever he needs to do to deal with this tragic moment. Because at times, you saw him, he gets very emotional. And it's difficult. I mean, the kids are 10 and 12 now, and they're gone.
Other quick thing that I wanted to ask you, I think I heard him say that she's bipolar. Is that something that he comes up with, or?
Yeah, that's some things that we're investigating. I've spoken to some individuals. I won't get into that now because nothing has been proven for sure, but there's tons of allegations that that could be true.
I mean, because he just based it on the behavior.
Right.
Okay.
John,
Interesting case.
the show is the legal zone where we tackle injustice. What injustices do you see here?
Ooh, well, I guess that's going to keep us busy for a while. But before we get into that, I do want to remind our listeners, viewers of the program to go down to the subscribe button down to the right there and click on that, because that'll keep you connected to all the different programming coming through the Legal Zone. And because you see, every time we do one of these, there'll be some illuminating story, something that may help you wherever you are in a situation. So subscribe, that's good for you, it's good for us. In terms of the justice issues, there are so many. I mean, several things, but I do want to go back to the justice situation of he, up till recently, was unrepresented, and how slippery justice can be when you are unrepresented and you're trying to navigate a system that, if we go through this, so we say, the half full mentality, that the legal system is meant to help and guide and create structure that we can all live with and work with and create better lives. Let's say we assume that. Even so, without the right guidance and support, justice can often be easily slipped through your fingers. For sure. I don't know if you want to say anything more about that before I mention anything else.
No, that's true. Go ahead.
Well, I go on to some of the other justice issues. I've seen it, you've seen it before, other people we've known, that no matter how, shall we say, righteous their cause, they're trying to, scale the walls of the legal system on their own. And they fail again and again and again. And it's not because the facts are not in their favor or the law is not in their favor. But you have to know how to navigate that. And some manage it. It's true, it's not impossible. I want to make that very clear. It's not impossible. And at the same time, I am very, very appreciative of a situation, let's say for Amir or last week's client, how difficult it is to get representation. So now you're always in this one down position. Well, justice just became a whole lot harder to get. So there's justice issue number one. Justice issue number two, you've been hitting on it, this idea of, well, the CPO apparently is holding all the weight here, this civil protective order. So a judge hears some things, puts this order against him, he's unrepresented, the judge does not appear to have really gotten the full sense of what's going on, but on the, as you're phrasing it, the point of view that it's safer to grant it than not grant it and have something happen. But now, this now becomes the club. Everybody beats it. Well, he's got a protective order. Well, he's got a protective order. So therefore, why should we do anything? So there is a huge piece of injustice, just the existence of the CPO and the weight that the other advocates and the courts are giving it. So again, something there, if you want to talk about that. And then there's
so really quick on the CPO, the Civil Protective Order, every state has this thing. Some states call it a peace order. It's an order, it's a stay away order. It's an order that a judge issues for one person to stay away from another person. And it's to protect that person from some sort of crime being committed against them. A violent crime, the crime of harassment, anything, right? Sometimes people would say, hey, he's texting me a lot. He's coming over my house a lot. She's texting me over and over. I want a peace order. I just want peace. I want a protection. In some jurisdictions, DC is one of them. If that's awarded, there's a stigmatism that comes with that. There's a presumption that comes with that. And it becomes a very dangerous tool in a custody battle. Judges, on one hand, they want to protect the people. They may not know everything that's going on. So they'll just say, look, to make sure that nothing happens, I'm going to award this protective order. And so I could understand why judges do it, but then the law is what the law is. And remember last week we said it's actually fair. If you see no evidence that a person is going to actually harm, harass, or do something to someone, there's no justification for awarding it. Also, the judge has to look at the circumstances that the person might bring. Sometimes a person A might do something to trigger person B. In this particular case, she kidnapped his kids. Now, he said that I didn't give any threatening text messages. I didn't do any of that. I didn't see the evidence that she brought into the court. But if she did bring text messages that weren't from his phone, there's a way of proving that. And that's where the legal representation would have come in. In his case, he didn't. And now we're fighting. We're fighting to say, okay, Your Honor, the CPO was in place. Yes, there's a presumption that he should lose custody, but let's look at the big picture and let's go to the timeline of what was going on. And we even go as far back as when they first got together. And she has a history of doing what she just did and taking it back. She has a statement, I found a statement under oath where she admitted to lying about him abusing another kid. So this is a pattern of her. Go ahead.
Well, and I want to say, what you're leading up to then is the other injustice that, again, and even sort of we're doing it here. We're getting fixated on the CPO. But where is the initial abuse, the initial parental bad act, if you were? Well, it's the taking of the children. And that seems to, again, sort of getting slid under the rug in this scenario. So there's the other justice question that needs to be addressed.
And notice how often people think that the police could help them. It was parental kidnapping. They go to the police, he goes to the police, and the police says, we can't help you. Dr. Chen, you was about to say something?
Yeah, I'm listening to the fact that Amir didn't have representation at a certain point. And I was listening to what John was saying, as well as what you were saying, but it seems like citizens are being, and I can talk about Washington, D.C., that perhaps we are part of some kind of unfair game that's being played. When we go into court, we thought that we could be pro se litigants. But a lot of us are realizing that once you go in without representation, we realize it too late. We lose. We realize, and we also realize that perhaps the judges, can't say absolutely, but perhaps the judges really don't want to deal with pro se litigants. And also, they were once lawyers themselves. Therefore, they want to deal with lawyers. So we're really left out in the cold. It's all a game. It's all a ruse.
There's a lot of truth to that. And I think maybe we'll have one of our shows where we talk about pro se versus having counsel. Because it's this, on one hand, as John is saying, you have to have the legal representation to navigate the court system. There's a way to deal with all of this. On the other hand, a client, an individual going through something, They know their story. They know the facts like the back of their hand because they're experiencing it. Sometimes an attorney will take in a case, they don't know that story. So when they're trying to relay that information to the judge doesn't see it. And the person's in the back saying, no, say this, no, say, and they don't know. And sometimes they will lose the case because they didn't have all the facts necessary to present a compelling story. So there's the slippery slope. And we'll talk about that on one of the shows.
Yeah, because it looks like Amir just showed up and he knew that he didn't do the text messages according to what he said. And so he felt that, perhaps he felt that he would be exonerated. Perhaps he felt that way.
Right.
Because of justice.
Mm.
Maybe it was just us. Oh.
And so I want to say you can be a pro se litigant, but one has to be totally open-eyed about what that scenario is. Right. And yeah, maybe I won't have a hesitancy saying the system is gamed to some extent in that respect, that you're just being a good, truthful, open, honest person isn't generally or often just going to carry the day.
Right, and we think it would.
And I'm going to even go far. I mean, I hear what you're saying about judges, but I'll even go as far as saying many judges will give that pro se litigant a little bit of a benefit of the doubt, will help them a little bit. But even so, in the American system, see, the European system is different. The European system, the judge runs the whole thing. Whereas in the American system, the judge kind of sits back and it's the lawyers who are kind of now presenting the arguments, and the judge gets to, or the jury in that case, gets to decide that. So the judge can help the pro se litigant to an extent, but at a certain stage in our system, the judge can't do all of the stuff that the judge would need to do to pull the pro se litigant through. It's just going to take too much time and effort. That's the lawyer's job. The lawyer's job is to kind of cut through it all. Here, Your Honor, is the gem. See, my client over here is a diamond in the rough. But I need to now cut the diamond and show you, here's the diamond. And that's what the lawyer will do for the judge. Because to Salon's point, yeah, he's right. Sometimes if the lawyer hasn't done the lawyer's job or hasn't worked well enough with the client, then the lawyer isn't presenting the story as well as the story could. But Salon is an expert, right, at telling the story. Because we know, and he can tell, I'm sure, many, many stories of clients. Oh yeah, they know all the story. They know what happened. But you put them in front of the judge and they're just going to bungle it. Because
they're all over the place.
They're all over the place. Yeah, right. They're just going to get all the facts, but they're going to be everywhere. And they're going to be presented in such a way that they're not going to make any sense. And they're probably going to be about half the facts that the judge doesn't need anyway. Right. But a salon is going to take that and now say, here's the story. And now it's like, well, duh. I don't need the law anymore. Now it is so obvious. And again, that's what a good advocate can do. Work closely with the client to now craft the story in a way that anyone who hears it can see, here are the big points, here's how it fits together, and here's how it now plays off of the law that's in play here. So.
Exactly. And that's what we try to do at the law firm. Get the facts, sit down, listen to the client's story. Like I said, we interview the client for hours, other people who know the story, get every little detail. And if it's a credible story, we take the case. And everybody has a story, right? Every single litigant has a story that brought them to court. It's a matter of getting the facts to relay the story, and of course, using the law that would bring about a favorable outcome. Thank you both again for this. I'm positive, not positive, I'm confident that we would have a positive result for Amir and reuniting his 2 kids with his family. I've spoken to his mother. His mother is distraught. She's hurting. She helped raise them. She lives here in Maryland. Yeah, we have other stories coming up. And just so people know, we're not all about men. Women have stories too, and we have women clients. And I'm thinking of getting a woman client who is going through something very similar. That might be our next show. Thank you all for watching. Again, subscribe in the bottom. And any questions, concerns, or comments, continue sending them to thelegalzone@remislaw.com. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Take care, Salon.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching our video. For experienced legal services in Washington, D.C., Alabama, and Washington State, visit our website at remislaw.com or call us at 1-833-329-1799.